Welcome to another episode of the Rollups EigenLayer series. Today we are here with Diego Kingston from Aligned Layer.
Welcome to EigenLayer Unlocked, an interactive educational journey through the EigenLayer ecosystem created by technical founders and builders for the entire crypto community. A special thank you to our partners, AltLayer, Polymer, Authentic, Skate, and Lagrange for helping to make this happen. Our goal is to raise the collective knowledge of the EigenLayer AVS ecosystem and unpack the technical designs of the top teams in the space. Welcome to EigenLayer Unlocked.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Rollups EigenLayer series. Today we are here with Diego Kingston from Aligned Layer to talk about ZK verification past, present, and future.
Thanks a lot, Robbie. I am, as you said, the co-founder and head of research at Aligned, and we are dedicated to verifying zero-knowledge proofs. And so I am going to make a brief presentation on the topic. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. So let's start with the problem we are trying to solve. This is the problem of building decentralized applications. And it will be clear why we need this technology in order to help, for example, blockchain scale or solve some of the problems we encounter when building this type of applications. So let's start with the beginning. Blockchains, remember, are verifiable computers. Okay, they coordinate among different parties, and the way we ensure that things are done properly is via re-execution. So everybody has to redo the same work and then reach consensus. Okay, the problem we have with this is that all the parties have to do exactly the same amount of work, and the problem is that then the weakest devices in the network become a bottleneck. So if you take a look, for example, at Ethereum currently, it can process around 10 to 15 transactions per second. And if we want this to scale, to bring like millions and even billions of users, we have to make the amount of transactions go up. So how can we solve this? Luckily, we have succinct integrity proofs, or sometimes we will call this like ZK for its acronym zero knowledge proofs, but we care about this property of succinctness, which means that the proof is short. And with them, what we can do is show that we did a computation right in a manner that is both time and communication efficient. Okay, so the idea is that I, as a party, can generate this proof, and all the other nodes in the network just verify this, and they spend less work than I had to do to run the computation. So this helps a lot scale. And the good thing is that we can create proofs of very complicated computations. For example, we can prove an entire block of transactions, and then the parties just have to verify this very short proof that they can do it in maybe a few milliseconds, even on, for example, cell phones. And we don't need to give them all the information of all the transactions and everything that has happened. We just need to give them some information maybe on some public inputs and, for example, the output of the program, and then they can just verify everything. Okay, so this solves the problem in the sense that what we can do is then delegate this computation to another machine, and then it can submit to the network the proof, and the rest has to do work. In that sense, we can then make blockchains more powerful by adding other computers doing computations off-chain and submitting them on-chain for verification. So we are solving the big problem that you had in blockchains, that if you add more computers, the blockchain isn't faster because every node has to re-execute. But with this, you get to scale up without losing any of the guarantees that you want. Okay, so if you want to build the apps, ZK or these integrity proofs are a core primitive. So how do these proofs work? The idea is that if we have a way of proving what we call an NP complete problem, that is to say a problem which we can verify its solution in polynomial time, for example, that can be proving that we have a valid assignation, for example, of a Boolean circuit, or for example, knowing that we have the solution, for example, for a Sudoku. Okay, solving a Sudoku may take you a lot of time, but if I give you the solution to a Sudoku, you can do it with just a few checks, and you're sure that that we did it properly. And the idea is that if we have one of these NP complete problems, then any other problem in the class NP can be reduced to this NP, and if we have the proof, then we can generate the proof for this reduction. Okay, so we have to choose which proof technology is the best one for what we are trying to do. And the problem is that, or the good thing is that you have like different trade-offs. So for example, you can have proofs that have larger proof sizes, and so that may have an impact when you want to check them in the blockchain, because then you have to pay for a lot of space. Then some have like higher verification times, others like higher proving times. Some can be, for example, post-quantum secure, and others are good, for example, have like easier properties of, for example, what we are going to talk later, which is proof recursion. Okay, so we have like a set of technologies, and we have to choose which one is best for our purposes. And it may be that for our application there is one that is like a lot better than the others, and we would like to use it. So here there are like some popular design choices that you have. For example, you can build your proof system using hash-based primitives, or maybe you can use elliptic curves. Then you have different choices regarding, for example, the finite field you're going to use. If you are going to use, for example, binary fields as in Venus, small fields as in Starks, or even bigger fields because you are going to work with elliptic curves. Then you have different ways of representing your computation. So this is more or less what happens when you write a computer program. Okay, when you write a computer program, in general, you write it in a higher level language, then it gets compiled into assembly, and then it gets compiled to bytecode, and that is what the computer runs. So in this case, to be able to generate these proofs, what we have is, in general, we have a program that we want to prove, but the problem is that is not the language our provers understand. So what we have to do is that some kind of compilation, which we generally call like building arithmetic circuits or arithmetizing, okay, expressing our program as a set of algebraic constraints. And depending on the choice, it may be easier to do some things, it may be more efficient, less efficient. And so we have to think a little bit what we want to do. Then, of course, there are like some choices. For example, you want to use univariate polynomials, multivariate polynomials, you want to leverage something called the sum check protocol. You have like plenty of options. Then you have some proof systems that need a trusted setup. Okay, in general, they offer shorter proofs, but at the expense of adding these extra security assumption. Then, of course, depending on the curve or the hash you use, it also affects the performance. And then you can, for example, use different lookup arguments, which are just specialized operations where you can go to a pre-computed table of valid input and output pairs, and then show, for example, that your result is contained in that table. And you have also different types of lookup arguments. And so what you see is that you get like a large variety of proof systems, and you have to choose which one suits you best. So here is an example of what proving looks like. Okay, this is just for what we call Starks using CK virtual machine. The idea of these primitives is basically you write your code in some higher level language, for example, it can be Cairo, or it can be Rust. Then the idea is that code gets executed on a virtual machine, and what it's going to output is, for example, the trace and the memory of the execution. Okay, then you have to do like some pre-processing, you have to do some conversion or encode all that information using polynomials. And then you have a series of steps that depends entirely on the protocol. But as you can see, the prover has to do a lot of work, and whether it's easier or harder depends a lot on the kind of technology you're using and some of the primitives that you add. For example, different hash functions can lead to dramatic changes in performance. And finally, after all these steps, what you get is a very short string that then you can check it by doing some very simple computations. Okay. So then once you get the proof, what you have to do is verify it, and that is what, for example, the nodes are going to do. And then, for example, what you do is you check that the proof is well formed, that it contains like the type of elements you need and the length it's supposed to have. You have to also check all the public inputs. Okay, check that they used, for example, the right initial values and that the output is correct. You may have to, for example, recover some verification parameters like a verification key or some information on the program you're running. For example, it can be the hash of the program or even the program's code. And after that, what you do is you run the verification algorithm, which is more or less like the previous case. Maybe you have to compute some functions and then do some basic checks. And the good thing is that verification in general is very fast. Okay, it can be in the order of milliseconds or even less. And no matter if your computation was like super complicated or super hard to prove, the verifier has to do a lot less work than the prover. So let's see what happens when we want to verify these proofs in Ethereum, because what we want is to, again, move the execution outside of Ethereum, for example, to a rollup. Then the rollup kind of submits the state diff and the proof showing that it is valid. And then each of the nodes in Ethereum re-executes the computations. They all reach consensus on the validity, and then they can update the state. So,
quick question: theoretically, does the execution move off of Ethereum L1 onto a rollup? Could Ethereum L1, instead of re-execution between all of the Ethereum nodes, could Ethereum L1 just execute once and verify and submit a proof and then verify amongst its nodes and arrive at consensus that way?
yeah, I think that you can. For example, the one proposing the block or something can generate the proof, and then the rest just have to verify, because the proof, what it does is it replaces re-execution.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you, I can say like, okay, I'm going to take all that heavy burden from you. You get this very short cryptographic string, and then you can run it, and it is the same as if you had re-executed the computation. So it's very promising, because then you can remove all these instances of re-execution to just re-execution of the verification.
Which is much cheaper, and I think you're going to get into the gas efficiency for proof verification here.
Yeah. So when we want to verify in Ethereum, we find like we have like some constraints. First, we cannot exceed the maximum gas that we have per block, and that of course limits the amount of proofs that we have. Then we don't have parallelization, which is something that we would love to have. For example, then if we get like millions of proofs from different like rollups or applications or whatever, and we want to verify them, if we can parallelize, they are like easy tasks, and we can process like maybe millions or at least thousands of transactions per second. Then we don't have like any kind of hardware acceleration or anything. We cannot leverage GPUs or whatever, because again, the upper capacity is bounded by the gas per block. Then, of course, another thing that we have is that we have to optimize the code for verification for gas consumption, because that's the relevant metric here, not speed. Going faster isn't going to make more proofs fit into a block. And then the other problem is that the cost depends on the availability of precompiled contracts. So there are like some operations that cost less because you have these precompiles. For example, pairing-based proof systems are way cheaper than others because the pairing has like a fixed cost. You know, it's going to take more or less 100,000 gas or something, at least for the checks you have to do. And so that may be way less than, I don't know, other things that you have to do for other proof systems. Of course, the main problem with this is that then you are limiting the kind of proof systems and primitives that you can use in Ethereum, okay? And that reduces your choices as a developer to choose like the best proof system for your application. So this, for example, has led many rollups to use a proof system that is very efficient to prove their blocks and everything. But once they get the proof, then they have to do another transformation, build what we call a recursive proof, and generate a new proof in another proof system that can be verified very cheaply in Ethereum. And that typically is some of the pairing-based proof systems. Of course, you are doing that at the expense of like additional costs and additional latency. And also you are like abandoning some of the nice properties that your proof system may have. Okay, so just to give you an estimate of the cost of proof verification, here I have like some popular proof systems, their gas cost, and just to give you like an estimate of the amount it is in US dollars. Of course, that depends on network congestion and then also on the relationship between Ether and the US dollar. But as you can see, the cheapest proof system is Graph 16. It costs around 250K gas, which is more or less like $6 per proof. It can be less, more, but it's more or less that number. Then if you want to use something like Halo 2, it's nearly double. If you want to use Starks are really efficient for proving, but they are like super expensive in Ethereum. They are like 20 times a Graph 16 proof. Then if you want to use, for example, Kimchi, which is the proof system you have in Mina, which is like very useful to do proof recursion and to have like a very succinct blockchain. It works really well in Mina, but in Ethereum, it's super expensive. So if you wanted to verify a Mina proof in Ethereum, it would be like super costly. And then, for example, there are others that we don't know their cost. For example, BNews or others, because I don't know, if we try to write down all the verification and all that, the cost might be even higher or even not fit into an entire block. So as you can see, we have like many developments, many excellent ideas in improving technology, but we cannot use them in Ethereum because we may lack, for example, some precompiles, or simply Ethereum is not adapted to this type of technologies. So the thing is, can we do better than this? And also we see that the cost, even the cost for Graph 16 is quite high. Okay, so if you wanted to use this, and you would have to pay a lot of money, for example, for some application. We have this story from Vitalik saying, who would pay like $6 to hide or $10 to hide information on the transaction of my purchase of a coffee or something. So what we see is that verification costs remain high, and that if we could reduce them, then of course we could begin unlocking several new applications. Besides, this is one of the main operational costs rollups have. If you take a look just in verification costs, rollups can have over $1 million per year, and that of course limits the prices they can offer for example, transactions. So targeting proof verification is very important to help Ethereum scale. Okay, because then we can process maybe more proofs, onboard more users, offer lower costs, and also like start developing new applications. So here are like some of the factors we mentioned. Of course, to adopt CK, one of them obviously is related to proof generation. Okay, in the last year or so, we've seen like many new tools that help us write provable applications more easily and faster. Okay, but in general, the problem with proof generation was that in the beginning you had to understand a lot of the details of CK. You had to write these what arithmetic circuits. Okay, so it was more or less like you want to code your application, but you have to do it in assembly language. Okay, you can do it, but it's going to be very painful, bug prone, and then you also had like very limited expressivity. The kind of things you could do was pretty limited. And then we have the other like half of the problem, which is verification. You have very high costs. These the verification tasks compete with other applications on top of Ethereum. You have like low throughput. Okay, so if we want CK to be used on a massive scale, then we have to solve these two problems. The first one, okay, I think is solved with CKVMs, prover networks, and hardware acceleration. Okay, so the idea is right now you can write uh, code normally, for example, in Rust, feed it to some of these VMs, and the VMs handle all the problem of proof generation. They are getting better and better. We have like some new exciting developments related to, for example, VNews or Circle Starks. So we've seen that, for example, it is possible with Circle Starks in Mac M3 to prove like 600K hashes per second, which is like a lot. That's more like over like 2 orders of magnitude more than what we could do before these new proof systems. Um, and then, of course, prover networks give us the chance to offload proof generation, which can still be computationally expensive to other parties, and there will be like some competition, and then we can get like lower prices. And of course, then we have like new tools related to hardware acceleration. So I think that we will see like consistent improvements in improving. And so then we have to look at the other half, which is proof verification. And there we have like two options. One is this idea of proof recursion. Okay, the basic idea here is remember that I can prove, let's say, any kind of program. One program I could prove is, for example, that I verified a proof, or that I verified two proofs. So what I would be doing then is taking two proofs, their public input, feeding them to my prover, and generating a proof that says that I verified those two proofs and the two proofs were valid. So now if I verify this new proof, this is exactly as if I had verified the two older proofs. So what I do is kind of bundle a collection of proofs into a single one, and then I post that to the L1, and the L1 just verifies one proof. But that proof is equivalent to maybe, I don't know, 1,000 proofs. And so the verification cost gets split among the different proofs. And the other option, of course, would be to build a dedicated blockchain for proof verification. Okay, so this would be like your two options. Either you move verification off chain to another chain that will only handle proof verification, or you use this proof recursion.
And or you could do both, right? You could bundle and submit to separate blockchain, and then you could and the proofs that you submit to the separate blockchain, you could bundle up a bunch of proofs together and then verify all of those at once. And so I think you mentioned, Groth 16 was like $6. You can amortize the $6 across maybe thousands. How many, just if you know off the top of your head, do you know how many proofs you could bundle together? Is it?
Well, right now, and this is one of the problems you have with proof recursion, you have remember that you have to prove that you verified like two proofs, and even though verification is very fast, proving verification is rather expensive because we have to prove all the operations involved in the verification, which, for example, can involve hash functions, and so we have to represent I don't know, the ketchup hash function, which is not that easy to arithmetize, or it's like more costly than just running ketchup normally. Or you have to do some things like field emulation if you're using elliptic curves. So of course there are like some of these, let's call them aggregation layers,
Mhm.
that what they do is they do proof recursion. Um, but the problem is you cannot add like many proofs together because you have to prove that you verified proofs. Okay, so I've seen some examples that maybe they can do 30, 50, but the more proofs you add, the slower it gets. And so what you are doing is kind of trading cost for latency. Okay, you say, okay, I'll have to wait more, but then I can reduce costs. And so you have something where, of course, you reduce costs, but maybe your application needs low latency. And so how can you do that? There is like an optimum, but the problem is you see that for some applications, then that you need low latency, you're going to get higher costs.
Mhm.
And if you get like low latency and higher costs. So
There's a trade-off. We're crypto people are very picky. We want both. We want both. We want it to be cheap and fast and
yeah,
secure.
everything, and that's the problem we always face in blockchains. You can't always have everything, but we can come like pretty close to that if we accept like some basic changes or a little trade-off somewhere else.
Yeah.
So as I was telling you, you have this problem. Okay, proof recursion, you add latency, but you reduce costs. It may be useful for some, I don't know, rollups do this. What rollups do is, for example, you want to prove the transactions in a block, and instead of like proving the whole block, you prove each transaction separately, and then you use this idea to combine the proofs of two transactions into one. And so what you do is like a binary tree of proofs, and you get one final proof, which is basically the proof of the block. Okay,
Mm.
so that's one of the ideas. With the verification layer, of course, then we are free to build our own blockchain, be like remove all the constraints from the EVM. We have like more design options. We can verify proofs like natively, but then we face like other problems. We have to bootstrap the economic security of the network. We have to build a new community, get operators. And the problem we have is that in the end, what we are trying to build is something that a new, like a new Ethereum, and something that is going to compete with Ethereum.
What do you mean by direct verifications of proofs or native proof verification?
The idea then is that we are going to run the verification using, for example, the Rust code directly on the CPU. We are not running it on top of a virtual machine like you have in Ethereum. Okay, so there is no like emulation or anything. It's just the code running on the CPU. So of course, then you get like several advantages compared to running them on top of a virtual machine. And you can start leveraging, for example, parallelization or some optimizations. So that's the whole idea. So what we can do then is try to get the best of both worlds, and that is where EigenLayer comes in. Okay, so one of the main advantages that we have with EigenLayer is that it allows us to bootstrap the security of an application thanks to restaking. And what it brings us is the possibility to get programmability on top of the EVM without being constrained by it and competing for block space. Okay, so we know that the EVM is going to be Okay, so this is where EigenLayer comes in. EigenLayer allows us to bootstrap the security of our application thanks to restaking, so we don't have to build everything from scratch. And what it gives us basically is to have programmability on top of the EVM without being constrained to it or having to compete for block space. Okay, so the good thing is that then we can combine the best of both worlds to build a decentralized integrity layer or verification layer on top of Ethereum. Okay, so what we can do then is have our network of validators or verifiers, which is secured by restaking. What the validators do is they receive the proofs, they run them on top of their CPUs, not on top of the EVM, okay? And then they reach consensus and they post those results to Ethereum. Ethereum then verifies uh, their signatures and everything, saying that the results are valid, and then Ethereum can update the states of those proofs. So what we can then get is, for example, a cost reduction by having like efficient batching techniques. So what we can do is, for example, uh, create a task where we say verify these 1,000 proofs, and what they do is they verify the 1,000. If all are correct and the majority of the validators say this is okay, then they all sign the message saying this batch is okay. They post it to Ethereum, and Ethereum says, okay, these signatures are valid and everything, so I have to update this. And so you can reduce here the cost by a lot, because you can, in principle, bundle as many proofs as you like. And another advantage is that you can easily incorporate any proof system. The only thing you need is, of course, to have the verification code written in some language, for example, in Rust. And then you just receive the proofs, the public input, and then you run the verification algorithm. It's going to say true or false. And based on that, you reach agreement with the rest and everything. So it's pretty efficient. And the good thing is we are not building a new network from scratch and having its own like consensus algorithm. It's very simple. It's just operators checking and signing messages, and then having like an aggregator that just gets all the signatures and produces the aggregate signature. So we are then not competing with Ethereum, but we are getting all the advantages of doing things like in a separate network. So
Couple
mhm.
questions. On the yeah. So um, first one here is on the recursion or the aggregation of these proofs. You mentioned before maybe 30 or 50 proofs, at which point you have an increase in latency. Is there any increase in latency by aggregating the proofs this way?
You practically don't have latency. You just wait until you get maybe several proofs. But once you get the batch, it goes directly to the validators. They just have to run this verification. Remember, verifying each proof is very fast. You can also use parallelization. And then what they do is just they sign a message saying this batch is correct, okay? And then it gets sent to an aggregator. The aggregator then checks that it reaches like quorum, that at least the majority said, okay, this is correct. And then the only thing it does is it generates this aggregated proof, posts it to Ethereum. So it's really fast. Maybe in a few blocks, it doesn't need even a block, but for example, in our case, maybe you wait 2 or 3 blocks to give like some time.
Why is this one much higher scale than the other proof systems that are only, that can only verify 30, 50?
Because here you are like not doing any complicated operation. You are just having computers re-execute the verification on top of the CPU and get like true or false. In the other case, what you have to do is generate a proof of a verification, which is way costlier than just running the verification. Proving adds like a lot of overhead on top of running a program. So here you just do it in few milliseconds. You can verify many proofs. And in fact, here we've tried it, and you can maybe verify thousands of proofs per second with not so much effort.
And that's because um, with EigenLayer, you can reuse the consensus mechanism of Ethereum, and you don't need to build your own consensus mechanism. That's how.
Yeah, there is like no consensus here, or the only thing is each operator signs a message with the root of the batch saying this batch is okay. If at least 2/3 agree on that, then it's more than enough to generate the aggregated signature, and then we post that to Ethereum. Ethereum then gets this signature and says, okay, this BLS signature, is it valid or not? And if it's valid, then it knows that the batch is valid and can update the state of the batch to verified. So that's the main advantage. You don't have like any overhead. It's like running the verification with like fewer nodes.
Got it. Okay. And then you mentioned that you're not constrained to the EVM, which makes sense. And then you also mentioned not being constrained or competing with block space, but you do have to post the result of the proof onto Ethereum. So how do you reconcile like not competing for block space but posting the result to Ethereum?
No, but the amount of gas that we spend is not that high, and for the time being, we send one batch every few blocks, okay, because there is not a very high like demand. Of course, as it grows, we can easily accommodate and send batches like more and more often. But that is like just sending maybe one Graph 16 proof or something a little bit larger. So in the end, think that compared to sending these millions or thousands of proofs together, you are just sending one. So you are like compressing a lot. Yeah. So that's the main advantage. Of course, in our case, we have at some point to use like some block space, but the amount we have to use is negligible or very small compared to the one we would have to use if we wanted to do this on top of Ethereum directly. So that's the main advantage. And remember that we can make patches as large as we like. So we've tried making like very big batches, and it works. And you can do maybe 4,000 proofs per second. At least that's what we tried on testnet. So
Cool.
it's really cool. And of course, EigenLayer then lets you build other services, which you can then compose to build decentralized applications. And since one of the core primitives to have decentralized applications is ZK, okay, because it allows you to compress computations and move them off chain and then check them on chain, we think that this will be one of the most important blocks for many applications. Of course, then will be others that will be as or more important than this, but this is going to be one, I think, core building block, having these decentralized verification layers. So some of the things we can get is, of course, then provide, for example, fast finality for rollups and app chains, or even like some kind of pre-confirmation. It also works to build like very fast bridges, develop new settlement layers, make L1s interoperable with Ethereum. Of course, then you can also have verifiable machine learning, on-chain gaming. Okay. And another important thing is that you can easily support multi-proving. Okay. So right now, most of the rollups, what they do is they have their proof system. They generate the proof with that proof system, send it to Ethereum. Ethereum verifies it, and then they update. The only problem that you have with that is that, for example, if your proof system has some bug or some vulnerability, then what may happen is somebody may take advantage and completely break your security. Now, if you're using two different proof systems, and in order for the transaction to be valid requires that both um, proofs are valid, okay, and they depend on different assumptions and techniques, then it is much harder to break um, the security of your system, okay? Because then you have to produce two different valid proofs using two different proof systems, and that may be very time consuming. Or even you could use something like TEs, for example, to provide like an alternative. And the good thing here is you can verify them very cheaply and very fast. And you can easily add the proof systems to, to the verification layer, as opposed to the case of Ethereum, where you have to use one of these not so expensive proof systems like Graph 16 or Plonk with KCG or something like that. Okay. And so what we think then is that we could be in the broadband moment for CK. So as we said, proving costs have been going down. It's easier to write verifiable applications. And so what you can build then is decentralized apps in a much easier way with increased security. And so if then you remove the the main barrier you have to use these applications, because you want these applications to be run on chain, then you have to tackle verification costs. If this is like really low, then the cost of adding ZK to any application becomes negligible. And so um, what we can then do is start building new kinds of applications. People will find ways to use this technology that offers us increased security, uh, and it's really nice because it's like many other things that we had before that maybe we didn't find like a good use case or something, but suddenly when it becomes like very inexpensive and easy to use, then people start using it like everywhere, and they start having like new ideas. The same that happened with internet before having broadband and after having that. So people might have said like, why do I need like more bandwidth if I am already okay? And then you have, of course, all these streaming services, YouTube, social media, and other things that were unthinkable before this. So I think that we may be close to a moment where CK can be used in many different places, even outside blockchain, because the main thing that it offers us is integrity, showing that things are done correctly without even having to look at it. So here is an idea, if you want to see, of how aligned is working. So basically, what you'll have are just users using the CLI to send their proof and some data to this verifier task patcher. Okay, that is going to receive the tasks and then create a batch. Okay, so what it does then, it once it gets like enough proofs, it posts all the data to Ethereum. In fact, what it posts is the root of a Merkle tree containing all the data, commitment to the data. And with that, it creates a new task. Okay, then the AVS operators, what they do is they receive a notification that there is a new task. And what they do is, okay, they go fetch all the information from a data service, they download all the proofs, run all the verification, and then each of them, if they see that the proofs are valid, they sign a message with the root of the batch. This gets sent to the VLS signature aggregator. It sees that it has quorum, aggregates the signatures, sends them to the service manager, and then the service manager just updates the state of the batch to verified. And then the only thing you have to do is use your data and an authentication path to show that your proof is included in the batch, to check that your proof is valid. And then you can do whatever you like. And here, of course, we had like some information on how the payment system is going to work. But overall, it's a nice and clean construction that you can use to verify proofs. And as I was telling you, you are not running on top of the EVM or doing costly operations. It's pretty easy. And then maybe some other moment I can talk a little bit more on how the payment system and everything is going to work, which has been one of the main focuses we had the last weeks.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think this is a great overview of the cryptographic system as it works. But would love to hear more about the economic system and the incentives at stake.
Okay. So of course, then there are like some things that we are still thinking related to the AVS and all that we have to talk with Eigen. But the payment system is pretty straightforward. The idea is that what you do when you send a task is say how much you are willing to pay as a maximum for your proof to get verified. And then what the batcher does is it tries to build the biggest batch possible, trying to minimize the cost. And for example, if it sees that maybe bundling 1,000 proofs, it gets like a decent cost to include those 1,000 proofs and your proof, and you offer to pay less than that, of course, then you are not going to get inside that batch and you'll have to wait longer. But for example, if you said, okay, I want to pay more, but then we make a bigger batch, then you are only charged for the cost of the batch. And the idea is that you just make a small deposit, you have an account, and then when you sign for the task and everything, if then we send it, the batcher is going to take a small amount to pay for all the costs. And then if you want, you can keep the funds inside this account or withdraw them. So depending on the amount of proofs you want to send and everything, you can keep your balance there or just withdraw it. And then, of course, from these fees and everything, we cover the expenses for the things we have to pay in Ethereum. That is the batch creation and the signature verification. And then, of course, we get a little surplus to also pay for the economic security and everything that we need to secure the network, and the rewards for the validators. So that's the basic idea. It's like I think like pretty simple and intuitive, which is something good, and so users can understand the full flow and what's going on there. And to give you like an example of something you can build using these simple architecture and everything is a bridge. And in particular, I am going to focus on the Mina to Ethereum bridge, which is something that if you want to do it right now on Ethereum, it's pretty complicated. Why? Because Mina uses one proof system that is not cheap to verify in Ethereum. And then what you have to do is do proof recursion in order to be able to verify it in Ethereum. And that proof recursion is really costly. It takes a lot of time. We try like some alternatives using, for example, CKVMs, but it takes a lot of time. You have to improve the code to make it friendlier for the VM, add precompiles, try to do things. And even if you could like finish all this wrapping and everything, the problem that you have is that the bridge is not just verifying the proof, because you can get a valid Mina state proof, but then you also have to check the consensus, which depends on CK proofs in the case of Mina. And then you have to also show your account, show that your account is included in that state. So this can be like pretty complicated, and if you want to do it in Ethereum, it's also expensive. So what we found out is that instead what we can build is a specialized verifier that checks the state proof and the consensus simultaneously. Okay, and the proof is valid if and only if the proof is valid and the consensus is valid. That happens because in Mina, for example, what you could get is a valid proof from a previous state, and then you'll try to update to a previous state, and that is problematic. The proof would be valid, but the problem is it wouldn't check, it wouldn't pass the consensus checks. And then to show account inclusion, what we can do then is also have a specialized verifier to show account inclusion instead of doing a CK proof or something. Since the account inclusion is pretty simple, then you can have like a direct verification of that. So with all these, you don't have additional proving, no latency. It gets really simplified, and the cost of the bridge is way lower than you would get if you had proof recursion and everything with Ethereum. So I think this is a very nice application that highlights the power of what you can have when you use AVSs or EigenLayer to build some specialized AVSs that remove some of the constraints you have with the EVM. And this is something that I particularly am very excited because I was working at some point, or helping like analyze some of the things of this proof system and all that, and it was like really complicated. And seeing that this can be done in a more efficient way without having to do crazy things to a proof system that is pretty efficient for their blockchain is really nice, and I think it will help connect two very interesting communities, as are the Ethereum community and the Mina community. And so a little bit about the future then is that with EigenLayer, we will be able to build different systems that then we can combine as Lego bricks to build new decentralized applications. CK is what we need to solve the scalability issues that we face in blockchains. And also, they are useful for these decentralized apps, because at some point you will have to re-execute or do something. And CK is a way of reducing the amount of re-execution you have to do. And so with lower costs and easy to write applications, we can expect that developers will find ways to use these technologies to build new, interesting products. I think it's going to be great. We can imagine also CK solving problems outside blockchains, for example, helping fight misinformation or control AI, or making sure that the answers you get from AI are from the model you want to use. And so we already know that there are like some very nice use cases of CK in blockchain and even outside blockchain. But I think that I am a bit more excited about the kind of things I still don't know that are going to happen. I know that we are building all the necessary infrastructure to make new decentralized applications. And I know that a lot of younger and more talented people will find ways of taking advantage of this reduction in costs and development to build the future. Thanks. If you have any questions or anything.
I think I asked all my questions throughout the presentation. That was phenomenal. Thank you very much. I'm equally excited about the future of ZK and all of the possibilities that are still unseen. I think there's lots of very smart people working very hard and putting lots of energy into this space. And so we continue to see innovations in ZK on the proving side and on the verification side. And honestly, I'm very excited for the ZK transition to take place. I think it's already happening from optimistic to ZK, and I think it'll continue to happen. So very, very excited for scaling blockchains with ZK. Thank you for being a big part of it.
Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure talking with you. I really enjoyed it.